Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to a most excellent edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sitdown. Oh yeah, dude, we ain't hiding anything, man. We getting into some Bill and Ted, but before we get to Bill and Ted Face the Music, it's Friday, which means it's Flashback Friday, which means we can jump on back and look at the two films that came before. Oh, that's right, baby. I got a nice little Bill and Ted Friday on deck for you guys. And we start by hopping into our own phone booth and traveling back to 1989. So why don't you pull up a chair, man? Take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in heinous free into Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I gotta tell you, man, the excitement I have for a new Bill and Ted movie is just insane. I've been a Keanu Reeves fan pretty much my entire life, and where I started with Keanu, very different than where I currently am with Keanu. I mean, before, my dude was one of the greatest action stars ever, one of the greatest action characters ever, Mr. John Wick, the most bad Johnny Dubs, my dude. But before you got that guy, we had a real funny guy, and I love Keanu Reeves, the action star, but watching him getting to talk on panels or in interviews with Alex Winter and even Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, the original writers of all the Bill and Ted movies, you just see this level of fun that doesn't always come off in his movies because a lot of what he does these days is Keanu just being a badass, man, and we love that stuff. But watching him talk about film, talking about this brotherhood he has with this group of people in particular, you can just see the amount of fun and see how the fun is what really got Keanu going, man. This movie, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, is just nonstop fun. And not only is Keanu fantastic, but so is Alex Winter. I mean, it created a duo that will span time, as two of the greatest, comedy characters of all time. I mean, I know lots of people who love Wayne's World, and when you talk late 80s, early 90s, you hear a lot of Wayne's World talk and, get a lot of quotes or things from that movie, which, fine. Like, you had that movie, they were on SNL too, so you saw the characters maybe a little bit more, but you don't ever get there without Bill and Ted. And like I said, Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon put together a script that's just an absolute blast, but also, highlights the fact that learning can be fun. Now, granted, for Bill and Ted, for learning to be fun, they have to travel back in time and, kidnap a bunch of historical figures. But, they found a way to make history and how important history is fun in a completely insane sci-fi comedy that just works front to back. Now, I will say this, and I don't want... It's I love this movie so much, I kind of cringe when it happened. There's one moment in the film after Bill and Ted kind of escape a deadly situation. They use a word after they embrace that totally would not fly today. And it's one of those things where I was like, damn, man, I wish someone would have just come in and just snipped those 3 seconds out of the movie, because you could take it out and it wouldn't affect anything. And you could just watch it without getting that, ooh. There's just that one moment. Outside of that, though, this movie plays just fine for an audience today. And it's one of those things that makes me very hopeful that the new movie will be able to play on things that we know from the old movies and stuff that would work now. I'm fascinated to see how they update some of the things. I mean, the usage of babe, not something that girls want to be called now. Back in the 80s, 90s, was commonplace. So it'd be interesting to see how Bill and Ted evolve, considering that they have they have wives and they have 2 daughters in the new movie. So that stuff is fun because these guys are not bad dudes, and I'm sure all of them cringe when they go back and go, oh, I can't believe that's in the movie. But outside of that one thing, man, this movie's still just an absolute ball. I mean, when I was a kid, Saturday afternoon movies on TV was a huge thing. I mean, it's where I watched Star Wars and Indiana Jones over and over and over again. Bill and Ted was also a pair of those movies, man. Anytime one of those was on, well, it was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or Bill and Ted Go to Hell, which was not okay for a title, so we got Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. But anytime those two movies were on, you better believe I was sitting in a seat and watching it. And it's because watching Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves create pop culture phrasing and catchphrases and quotes and slang. I mean, most excellent and party on, dudes. Like, that is, the minute you say one of those things, you know exactly what you're talking about, who you're talking about, what's going on. And just these two characters are so likable, man, because they're so relatable. As a kid in school, sometimes there's a lot of things that are way more fun than learning, specifically in history. If you're not a history buff, like, that stuff could be boring to some people. And to kind of tackle that approach and find a way to have fun with it when they give this presentation at the end. Basically, the presentation is speak in the voice of, a historical figure and say how they would feel about San Dimas, California in the year 1989. And they go back and kidnap a bunch of historical figures and do this awesome presentation at the end. It's so much fun. And you can see that not only were they, like, it seemed like, oh, we'll get these guys, we can tee it up, and then they'll talk, and that's how we'll pass. But you see, as they go through their journey, when they start doing the presentation, they actually learned things. And they did it because it was fun. And it's one of those things that is a wonderful lesson. If you can find a way for learning to be fun, kids will learn. And that's, like, right through this entire ridiculous sci-fi comedy. But I could just watch these two guys do anything all day long because their chemistry and how funny they are and their comedy is just so on point. And for me, one of my favorite stretches of the whole movie is when they go to medieval, England, and they have to sneak into a castle, so they hide in a pair of, knight's armor. And when they get out, Bill's like, they're like, oh yeah, we did it. And Bill's like, dude, this is really heavy. And Ted is like, heavy metal. Like, that is the stuff that I live for in this movie. And then you follow it up with the two guys taking the swords and acting like they're lightsabers and playing out Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. And you're just like, oh, yes, dude. Like, again, like the early days of having pop culture references inside of a film. Being like, okay to just stop what you're doing in the movie and have Bill and Ted just have a lightsaber battle, because Bill and Ted are always Bill and Ted, even in the middle of an adventure. I mean, they run into themselves a couple times in the movie and remind themselves to do things, but then they might forget by the time they're supposed to, which plays into a absolutely wonderful time travel thing that you never get to see played with. And that's like late in the movie, everybody's been arrested and they need to break them out. And Ted's dad is, like the one of the head of police in San Dimas. And, basically if they don't pass, Ted is going to Alaska to go to military school. That's the whole reason this movie starts. Rufus, played by the wonderful George Carlin, shows up from the future, where Bill and Ted's The Wild Stallions music has created peace amongst not just the Earth, but the entire galaxy. And in order to make sure that endures, they have to pass, because if they don't pass, they'd be separated, and then nothing would happen. So that's what the crux of the movie is, why they all of a sudden start going back in time. But in order to break everybody out, they need the keys, and Ted's dad had talked about how his keys were missing, couldn't find them. And they have this exchange where it's like, oh my gosh, dude, we could do it after the presentation. Like, we'll go and we'll get my dad's keys and we'll leave them here behind this thing so that when we get here now, they'll be there. And boom, the keys are there. They need a distraction. And all of a sudden you hear Ted's voice, like, off in the distance. And his dad gets up and goes, they leave each other notes. Like, all of a sudden it's just like, oh man, how can we get out of this situation? Oh, remember a garbage can, and a garbage can. Like, so, I've never seen any other time travel movies do anything like that. Or at least not recently or off the top of my head. But if they did do it, probably came because Bill and Ted did it first. And that's some of the stuff that I love in this movie. But I also love all of the historical characters. I mean, they go back and hide and kidnap Napoleon, Billy the Kid, Socrates, who they refer to as Socrates, Sigmund Freud, Genghis Khan, Joan of Arc, and Abraham Lincoln, and Beethoven. Like, too many people, and the amount of people in the phone booth is just nuts. But what's cool is, like I said, they could have used them, but they end up getting to do the report legitimately, because when they get back, Napoleon, when they first travel with Rufus, Napoleon gets sucked into their kind of time-traveling wormhole and lands in San Dimas. So he gets led with, I believe, Ted's brother all day, and then Ted's brother ditches him because he's a dick, and they have to go find him. And up to that point, we get to see, like, Napoleon go bowling and suck at it, and then he goes to a water park, which is one of the best sequences. Watching him go through a water park is just amazing. Terry Camilleri just his facial expressions and the way he acts and their shots, man. You watch people go down some of these slides, and there's a doc coming out, if it's not out already, on Netflix about Action Park, which is one of the most dangerous theme parks of all time. And you just watch like a little bit of this, and you go, oh yeah, I could see how people die on things like that, because they were nuts, like totally not things you would see now at water parks, as far as like safety precautions go. But that section is just wonderful, and while they're going to find him, everybody else ends up at the mall. That's how they end up getting arrested. But watching the group of historical figures be in the mall, and that's how they all realize how great San Dimas is. I mean, you get Beethoven in a music store, and they show him synth, like on a keyboard, and all of a sudden before you know, he's got 8 keyboards, and he's doing this crazy music. Joan of Arc stumbles into like a jazzercise aerobics class that becomes like something that she wants to go teach people back in France when she gets back there. Socrates, who's played by Tony Steedman, who's just fantastic. I mean, one of the cool things too is they use natural language in this. So Socrates speaks Greek, Joan of Arc and Napoleon speak French. Sigmund Freud speaks a little Austrian before he goes into his English. German from Beethoven, and you get subtitles, which is totally not something that happened a lot back then. And that stuff is fun because it allows for this barrier to exist that Bill and Ted are able to get through and be able to communicate with everybody. I also just love that they grab these guys and everybody's down to go on this crazy journey. You just roll with it, and it allows you to have a ton of fun because it's who cares if real Socrates would have been like, no way, I'm not getting in. What is that? But watching them then try to interact with other people and that language barrier be an issue allows for some really funny and wonderful moments for all of them. I mean, watching them kind of philosophize, all we are is dust in the wind, dude, with Socrates is amazing. And then that plays into when they kind of communicate on stage during, their presentation. Ted translates everything for Socrates, and it's wonderful to watch. But you get Socrates or Socrates and Billy the Kid just kind of chilling at a food stand, and 2 girls are looking at him and giggling. They're like, all right, we'll go over there. And it's oh man, you got this really old dude. They're all they're look at his little sandals and stuff. And Sigmund Freud comes up, and the girls are like, oh, what a geek, and they leave, and they're like, way to go, Freudy. But that's fun. And then Genghis Khan goes into a sports shop, finds a baseball bat, and is fascinated with it. Puts on football pads and a skateboard, and is just barreling through people. And that stuff is a ton of fun to watch. And Abraham Lincoln goes to an old timey photo place, and they go to take his hat. He's like, that's my hat. And the guy's like, no, it's not. And that stuff is just pure genius and so freaking enjoyable that you end up with a movie that's Act 1, we're time traveling, going and getting all these people, plucking them from all these different times. We'll break an antenna, so we got to all chew gum and stick it back together. Then Act 2 is, them all in San Dimas, and by the time you get to Act 3, you get the presentation, and it's just just so enjoyable. And then you get Rufus bringing back. They see 2 women, in medieval England, and they're they try to get them to escape because the girls are our dad is gonna make us marry these really old guys, and they're yo, old ugly historical dudes. So they try to get him out of there, and it doesn't happen. So Rufus ends up, spoilers, bringing them back at the end, and you find out that they are also in the band, which means they end up staying there the whole time, and probably marry Bill and Ted, which means wonder if we'll see them, because obviously Bill and Ted both have girls, and that's all in the movie. So I wonder if the British girls from England will be in the new movie. That would be kind of cool. But I just love all these elements. And then George Carlin, I mean, R.I.P. George, but just he's so minimal. Anytime he pops up, though, awesome. And then when they go to the future and you see what Bill and Ted's future looks like because of their music, it's awesome, man. It's a really kind of futuristic, trippy kind of vibe, and everybody's real calm and peaceful, and a lot of serenity in that whole section. They end up there at one point, and you just see them almost get worshipped, and they're this is crazy. And freaking Clarence Clemens is the main guy. I mean, I'm a huge Springsteen fan. So seeing Clarence pop up, another R.I.P., man. But I mean, that whole bit is just great. And like I said, I love George Carlin so much. So there you go, man. Those are all my thoughts on the absolutely bodacious and totally excellent Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I love this movie. It's an absolute classic. And like I said, I'm just so excited that we're getting to like re-show everybody this movie to get ready for the new one. I'm just so excited because I love Alex Winter and Keanu. They're just a wonderful team to kind of run around with. And this movie just still, like I said, holds up, man. Still, I laughed out loud while I was rewatching it today. So those are all my thoughts, man. Now I want to know what you're thinking. Are you a fan of Bill and Ted? All their movies, you know, have you seen just Excellent Adventure? Have you never seen any of them? Are you looking forward to the new one? And if you've seen Excellent Adventure, what's your favorite part, man? What like I said, that when they're in those knight armor and they're battling with swords and stuff, like doing lights, like, oh, that whole stretch is just great. So like whatever your favorite parts are, things that you love or don't love about the movie, does it hold up now for you? All of that can go down below in the comments section. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man as we get ready to talk about Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and then of course Bill and Ted Face the Music, as well as any movie, TV reactions we're doing. You want to show a little love, jump over there, man. Hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell that follows if you want those alerts. Until next time, this is the C-Man reminding you to be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. Peace! Well, I'll be. You guys are still here. You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. C-Man's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the C-Man goodies, join the Cinema Sit-Down Squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.